I heard the pen scratch against the paper. Not to save me, but to end me. Even though the doctor said I was showing signs of waking up. My sister demanded they cut my life support, but what made her panic wasn't seeing my eyes open. It was the single sentence I managed to whisper, freezing the entire room. If you think this is just about money, you are wrong. She was terrified of what I knew. My name is Emery Hernandez. I am 34 years old, and for the last 10 years, I have worked as a senior fraud investigator for the Northline Risk Bureau. My job is to detect the subtle tremors in a financial statement that indicate a lie. To spot the microscopic cracks in a person's story before the whole thing shatters. I am good at what I do because I know how to listen. I know how to wait. But right now, lying in this sterile bed in the intensive care unit of a hospital in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, waiting is the only thing I can do. I am a prisoner in my own flesh. My body feels heavy, as if someone has poured concrete into my veins and let it harden. I cannot lift a finger. I cannot wiggle a toe. My eyes are closed, glued shut by a heaviness that feels like gravity has increased tenfold specifically on my eyelids. I am floating in a dark, terrifying void. But my hearing is agonizingly sharp. It is the only sense that remains loyal to me. I can hear the rhythmic mechanical whoosh-click hiss of the ventilator pushing air into my lungs. It is an artificial breath, cold and dry, keeping my chest rising and falling because my brain has forgotten how to do it alone. I smell the acrid scent of antiseptic cleaner, the faint metallic tang of blood, and underneath it all, the cloying, suffocating perfume my sister wears. It is Chanel, applied too heavily. As always. "Doctor, please," Blair's voice cuts through the hum of the machinery. It is not the voice of a grieving sister. It is the voice she uses when she is returning a dress she has already worn, sharp and demanding, with a veneer of polite concern that does not quite reach the eyes. "Look at her. It has been 3 days. She is just existing. It is cruel to keep her like this." "Ms. Hernandez, as I explained," a male voice responds. Tired but firm. That must be Dr. Nolan Price. I recognize his cadence from the rounds earlier. Emery is showing neurological activity. Her pupillary reflex is sluggish. Yes, but it is there. She is not brain dead. We need to give the swelling time to subside. "Reflexes," Blair scoffs. I can hear the click of her heels pacing the linoleum floor. Click, clack, click, clack. A frog kicks when you galvanize it. "Doctor, that does not mean it is alive. She would not want this. Emery was always so independent, being hooked up to machines, being a vegetable. She made me promise." Liar. I try to scream, but the tube in my throat chokes the sound into silence. I never made her promise anything. We barely spoke about dinner, let alone end-of-life care. The last time we spoke, she was luring me to the boathouse to kill me. There is also the matter of the estate expenses. Another voice joins in. It is lower, smoother, like oil sliding over velvet. Grant Sutter. He calls himself an asset advisor, but my investigator's instinct pegged him as a grifter the moment he walked into our family home 6 months ago. The trust has specific clauses regarding incapacitated beneficiaries. We are approaching a critical financial timeline. If we do not make a decision by 5 o'clock today, the assets freeze. It complicates the liquidity for the Marina project. "This is not about money, Grant," Blair lies, her voice hitching in a performance of tragedy. "This is about mercy." "Of course," Grant replies, his tone dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that they think I cannot hear. "But the papers need to be signed now if we want the transfer to clear before the weekend. The doctors are just racking up billable hours." I feel a surge of panic so intense it feels like fire in my chest. They are not waiting for me to die. They are expediting the process. Grant isn't worried about my suffering. He is worried about the banking hours. "I understand your position, Ms. Hernandez." "Doctor," Price says, sounding weary. "But medical ethics require—" "I have her medical power of attorney," Blair interrupts. her voice rising, cracking like a whip. I am her sole surviving relative. I am the proxy. The document is on file. I have the authority to decline further intervention if there is no quality of life. Are you telling me you can guarantee she will wake up and be normal? Can you guarantee she won't be a burden? Silence. Doctor, Price cannot guarantee that. No doctor can. I cannot make that promise, he admits softly. Then let her go, Blair says. The command is absolute. Bring me the release forms. I am ending this, for her sake. My heart rate monitor must be spiking, but they are too distracted to notice the frantic beeping. Or perhaps they think it is just the body distress of a dying woman. I focus everything, every ounce of willpower I have honed over 34 years of life. Into my face. I need to move. I need to signal. Wake up, Emery. Wake up, or you die. I hear the rustle of paper. It sounds like thunder in the quiet room. Here, Grant says. I have the duplicate forms right here. Just sign where I marked the X. Thank you. Grant, Blair whispers. I hear the cap of a pen being removed, the scratch of ink on paper. It is a distinct sound, a ballpoint pen digging into the fiber of a document. It is the sound of my death warrant. She is signing her name with the same flourish she uses on credit card receipts. Done, Blair says, exhaling as if she has just set down a heavy load. Do it, doctor. Turn it off. I need to record the time of death pronouncement procedure. Doctor, Price says reluctantly. I hear him step closer to the bed. I feel the warmth of a human hand near my face. Checking the tube. Reaching for the settings on the ventilator. Disconnecting support in 3, 2. The panic transforms into rage. Pure, white-hot. Adrenaline-fueled rage. It is not fear anymore. It is the fury of a woman who realizes her sister is not just selfish, but a murderer. Open. I command my eyelids. I visualize the muscles contracting. I imagine lifting a steel gate that weighs 1,000 pounds. Open. Doctor? Price's hand brushes the switch. With a sound that echoes inside my skull like a tearing canvas, my eyes snap open. The light is blinding. The fluorescent bulbs above are searing white halos, burning my retinas. My vision is blurry, swimming in tears and lubricant. But I force focus. I force the world to sharpen. The first thing I see is the doctor's white coat. He freezes, his hand hovering inches from the control panel. He looks down, and his eyes widen in genuine shock. He gasps, stumbling back a step. Wait, he breathes. Blair is standing at the foot of the bed. She is wearing a black dress, tasteful, somber, perfect for the role of the grieving sister. She is looking at the doctor, not me. What is it? She demands, impatient. Why did you stop? She opened her eyes. Doctor. Price stammers. Blair's head snaps toward me. For a second, just one singular heartbeat. I see the mask slip. I see the annoyance. I see the terror. But then, she composes herself. She thinks I'm just twitching. She thinks this is the galvanized frog effect she argued about. She leans over the rail, her face coming into my field of vision. She looks beautiful and terrible. And then, she smiles. It is a small, sad smile for the doctor's benefit, but her eyes are cold, hard flint. She thinks she has won. She thinks I am in there, awake but helpless, just in time to watch her kill me. She reaches out and brushes a strand of hair from my forehead. Her fingers are ice cold. Shh, she whispers, soothingly. It is okay. Emery. Go to sleep. Let go. She wants me to fade. She wants me to close my eyes and accept the darkness. But I am an investigator. I do not let go until I have the evidence. And I have it. I summon the air from the bottom of my lungs, fighting the plastic tube that snakes down my trachea. It feels like swallowing razor blades. My throat is parched, dry as a desert, unused for days. I push the air up, around the obstruction, vibrating cords that feel stiff and bruised. I lock eyes with her. I do not blink. I grip my teeth and force the sound out. It is not a voice. It is a grinding, metallic rasp, a sound that belongs in a horror movie. But it is audible. It cuts through the silence of the ICU like a knife. Hurricane. Lantern. I hiss. The words wet and broken. Blair's hand freezes on my forehead. Her smile falters. I take another jagged breath, fighting the machine that is trying to breathe for me. Boathouse. I force the word out, staring straight into her soul. Memory card. I see the color drain from her face. It happens instantly, like someone pulled a plug. She goes from flush to ghostly pale. Her pupils dilate. She knows. She knows exactly what I'm talking about. Grant steps forward, his smooth face crumpling into confusion and alarm. What? What is she saying? I summon the last ounce of strength I possess, channeling every bit of hatred and justice I have left. Heard. Everything. The silence that follows is absolute. It is heavier than the darkness I just escaped. Doctor. Price looks at me, then at Blair, then back at me. He pulls his hand away from the ventilator switch as if it has suddenly become red hot. He steps between me and my sister, his body language shifting from medical professional to protector. Blair takes a stumbling step back, her high heel catching on the linoleum. She looks at Grant, panic flaring in her eyes, raw and undisguised. The pen she used to sign my death warrant slips from her fingers and clatters onto the floor. I do not close my eyes. I keep them fixed on her. I want her to know that the papers she just signed are worthless. I want her to know that the sister she tried to bury is not only alive, but she is the only witness to the crime. And I am not going anywhere. The atmosphere in the intensive care unit shifted instantly from a place of healing to a crime scene. The air, previously stale with antiseptic and the hum of machinery, now crackled with a violent electric tension. Doctor, Nolan Price did not just step back from the ventilator, he transformed. The fatigue vanished from his posture, replaced by a rigid, defensive alertness. He moved his body physically between the foot of my bed and my sister, a human shield in a white coat. "Nurse Monroe," Price barked, his voice abandoning its bedside softness for a command tone that brooked no argument. "I need you in Bay 4, now, and call security on standby. Keisha Monroe." The head charge nurse who had been managing the station outside appeared in the doorway seconds later. She was a formidable woman who had seen more death and drama in her 20 years of nursing than most soldiers saw in a war. She took one look at the scene, the pen on the floor, Blair's pale face, Doctor, Price's defensive stance, and she understood. She did not ask questions. She walked straight to the control panel of my life support system, crossed her arms over her chest, and planted her feet. She was guarding the switch. Blair recovered from her shock, and her fear instantly mutated into aggression. It was her default mechanism. When cornered, attack. "This is ridiculous!" she shrieked, her voice shrill enough to make the glass partition vibrate. "She is seizing! I told you she has reflexes." That was not a sentence. It was a spasm of a dying brain. "Why are you listening to a vegetable? Finish the protocol." That was cognitive speech. "Ms. Hernandez?" "Doctor," Price said, his voice deadly calm. She responded to a specific stimulus with context-aware vocabulary. "Lantern. Memory card. That is not a reflex. That is memory. And that implies she is fully conscious." "It is gibberish!" Blair yelled, stepping forward. "She is hallucinating. She has been hypoxic for 3 days. You are violating my rights as her proxy. I have the paper. I signed the paper." "The paper is under review," Price shot back. "As the attending physician, I have the authority to suspend any end-of-life directive if there is a significant change in the patient's status. And this," he pointed at me, his eyes briefly meeting mine with a reassuring intensity, "is the definition of a significant change. We are legally required to perform a full neurological reassessment. That takes time." It was a stall tactic. I knew it, and Grant knew it. While Blair was busy making a scene, Grant Sutter was terrifyingly quiet. He had not moved since I spoke. He stood near the window, his expensive suit absorbing the harsh hospital light. He looked at me not with fear, but with a calculation so cold it made my blood freeze. He was analyzing the risk. He was calculating the variables, if I was awake. The timeline for the Marina deal was dead, but if I talked, his freedom was dead. "Doctor," Grant said, his voice smooth, trying to de-escalate the room to regain control. "Let us all take a breath. Blair is just emotional. Her sister is suffering. Surely we can discuss this in your office? The estate faces severe tax penalties if we do not execute the transition by 5 o'clock. The patient is the priority, not the estate," Keisha said, cutting him off. She did not like Grant. I could tell by the way her jaw set when he spoke. I tried to move my hand, to point at Grant, but my fingers only twitched uselessly against the sheets. I had to use my eyes. I locked my gaze on Dr. Price, then shifted it violently toward Grant, then back to Price. I did it again. "Look at him. He is the danger. Doctor." Price caught the movement. He frowned, following my gaze to Grant, then back to me. Then he looked at the pen on the floor, and back to me. The pieces were clicking into place. The urgency to pull the plug. The timeline. My whispered words about a memory card. He realized then that he was not mediating a family dispute. He was interfering in a homicide. "I am not going to my office." "Doctor," Price said slowly. He reached into his pocket. He did not reach for the landline on the wall, which would route through the hospital switchboard. He pulled out his personal cell phone. "Who are you calling?" Blair demanded, her voice trembling with a mix of rage and rising panic. "If you call the hospital ethics board, I will sue you for malpractice. I will have your license." "I am not calling the ethics board," Price said. Unlocking his screen, he tapped a contact. He put the phone to his ear, his eyes never leaving Blair. "I am calling Detective Janice Klein. She was the officer who took the statement when Emery was admitted." Blair gasped. The threat of legal action evaporated, replaced by the primal fear of a trapped animal. She looked at Grant, pleading silently for him to fix this. Grant's facade cracked. He reached into his jacket pocket. "No phones," Keisha barked. She had been watching him. When Grant tried to slide his phone out, presumably to delete evidence or signal an accomplice to scrub the boathouse, Keisha was faster. She slapped the emergency call button on the wall. "Security to ICU Bay 4, code gray. Security to Bay 4. "I was just checking the time," Grant lied, sliding the phone back. But the damage was done. He had shown his hand. Blair, realizing the physical intimidation was failing, switched tactics instantly. She crumbled. It was a terrifying performance. Her shoulders slumped, tears welled up in her eyes, and her voice dropped to a pathetic wobble. "You do not understand," she sobbed, looking at the nurses who were gathering outside the glass. "Emery, she has problems. She has struggled with depression since Mom and Dad died. She abuses painkillers. She makes things up. Paranoia is a side effect of the withdrawal. She is in pain, and you are dragging this out because of the ramblings of an addict." I wanted to scream. I wanted to sit up and strangle her. I have never touched a painkiller recreationally in my life. I am a fraud investigator. I am the most sober, boring person in our family, but the accusation was smart. It planted a seed of doubt. If I was an unreliable narrator, my testimony about the lantern and the push could be dismissed as a hallucination. Dr. Price did not buy it. He was looking at my chart. Her toxicology screen was clean upon admission. Ms. Hernandez. There were no opiates in her system, just trauma. "She hides it," Blair insisted, desperate. "Grant, tell them. Tell them about the pills we found in her apartment." Grant opened his mouth to support the lie. But the heavy double doors of the ICU swung open. 2 uniformed security guards marched in, followed by a woman in a trench coat who looked like she had slept in her car. Detective Janice Klein. She looked tired, holding a coffee cup in one hand and a badge in the other. She took in the scene. The weeping sister, the slick consultant, the defiant doctor, and me, the woman who was supposed to be dead. "Dr. Price," Klein said, her voice raspy. "You said on the phone there was a development?" "The patient is conscious," Price said. "And she made a statement regarding the nature of her injuries. She claims there is a recording, audio and video." Klein's eyes narrowed. She looked at me. I blinked once, slowly, deliberately. "Ms. Hernandez." Klein stepped closer to the bed. "Can you hear me?" I blinked again. "Did you fall?" Klein asked. I kept my eyes wide open. I did not blink. "Did someone push you?" I blinked, hard. The air left the room. "Officer," Klein gestured to the security guard, "please escort Ms. Hernandez and Mr. Sutter to the waiting room. Separate them. Do not let them speak to each other. Do not let them use their phones." "You cannot do this," Blair screamed, dropping the sad sister act. "I am her guardian. I demand to stay with her." "Not anymore," Klein said. "Given the accusation and the patient's consciousness, your medical power of attorney is temporarily suspended pending a judicial review. You are a person of interest in an attempted murder investigation. Step out of the room." Blair lunged, not at the cop, but at me. She threw herself toward the bed, her hands reaching out, her nails extended like claws. "You ungrateful bitch!" she screamed at me. "After everything I did, you ruin everything." The security guard caught her by the waist before she could reach the railing. He dragged her back, her heels skidding on the floor. She was thrashing, screaming obscenities that echoed down the sterile hallway. Grant did not scream. He walked out quietly, his head down, like a man who was already planning his plea deal. When the doors finally closed, sealing the noise out, Dr. Price let out a long breath. He looked at me, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted his stethoscope. "Okay, Emery," he whispered, using my first name for the first time. "You are safe. They cannot touch you now. Rest. We have a lot of work to do." I closed my eyes, but not to sleep. I was visualizing the boathouse. I was visualizing the lantern hanging from the beam. I was praying that the battery on that camera had lasted long enough to catch the truth, and that the police would get there before Grant's reach did. The war had just begun. Lying in the dark of the hospital room, with the police stationed outside and the machinery humming a steady rhythm. My mind does not drift forward to the recovery. It drifts back. It goes back to the moment the rot in our family started to smell. It was not 3 days ago. It was 4 years ago. It started the day the Coast Guard knocked on our front door. Our parents, David and Maria Hernandez, were experienced sailors. They respected the ocean. They checked the weather reports religiously. So when the officers told us that their 40-foot sloop had capsized in calm waters less than 2 miles from the shore, it did not make sense. They called it a freak accident, a mechanical failure of the steering column that led to a catastrophic collision with a submerged reef. There were closed caskets, there were endless casseroles from neighbors, and there was Blair. At the funeral, Blair wore a dress that was slightly too short and sunglasses she refused to take off indoors. She cried, but between the sobs, I heard her asking the probate attorney when the insurance payout would clear. She was 30 years old then, but she had the impulse control of a teenager with a stolen credit card. The real fracture happened 2 weeks later in the mahogany-paneled office of the family solicitor. Blair sat on the edge of her seat, practically vibrating with anticipation. She had already leased a new Porsche, assuming the inheritance was a lump sum deposit. When Mr. Henderson read the will, the air left the room. Our parents had left a substantial estate, accumulated through decades of real estate investments and Dad's architectural firm. But they knew Blair. They knew about her 3 failed businesses. They knew about the gambling debts Dad had quietly paid off. They knew that if they gave her $1 million on Tuesday, she would be destitute by Friday, so they locked it up. The estate was placed into a family trust. The trust provided a modest monthly stipend for living expenses, enough to be comfortable, but not enough to be reckless. But the kicker, the thing that made Blair's face turn a violent shade of red, was the administration clause. I was named the sole trustee. I was the younger sister, the boring one, the one who stayed home on Friday nights to study forensic accounting while Blair was out clubbing in Miami or Ibiza. Mom and Dad had written a letter to accompany the will. It said, simply, Emery is the anchor. Blair is the sail. You need the anchor to keep the boat from crashing against the rocks. Blair did not hear the love in that metaphor. She only heard the control. She screamed that I had manipulated them, that I had stolen her birthright. She threw a heavy crystal paperweight at the wall, shattering it, before storming out. For 3 years, our relationship was a series of cold wars and icy ceasefires, mostly revolving around her asking for money and me citing the trust bylaws to say no. Then, 6 months ago, the dynamic shifted. Blair stopped asking for small amounts to cover credit card bills. She suddenly became sweet. She started inviting me to dinner. She said she had turned a leaf, that she had met someone who was teaching her how to build real wealth. That was when she brought Grant Sutter home. He walked into our dining room wearing a suit that cost more than my first car. He had perfect teeth, a perfect tan, and a handshake that felt like gripping a dead fish, firm but cold. He did not eat much. He spent the entire meal watching me, measuring me, over dessert. They made their pitch. It is a distressed asset, Grant said, sliding a glossy brochure across the table. A marina development in Key West. The developers ran out of liquidity, and we can buy in for pennies on the dollar. It is a guaranteed 300% return within 18 months. Emery, conservative estimates. Blair was beaming, clutching Grant's arm like he was a trophy. Grant got us an exclusive spot in the buy-in round. We just need the deposit. How much? I asked, keeping my face blank. $250,000, Grant said. He said the number casually, as if he were asking for salt. I looked at the brochure. It was full of stock photos and buzzwords. Synergy, vertical integration, luxury lifestyle. It lacked the one thing a real prospectus needs: audited financials. I cannot authorize $250,000 for a speculative investment, I said. The trust charter forbids high-risk venture capital. It is for preservation, not gambling. It is not gambling, Blair snapped, her smile vanishing. It is an opportunity. You always do this. You choke everything good in my life. I will look into it, I said, to shut her up. Leave the paperwork. I did not look into the marina. I looked into Grant, at the Northline Risk Bureau. I have access to databases that go deeper than a Google search. I spent 2 nights digging. Grant Sutter was a ghost. He had no credit history prior to 5 years ago. But when I ran a facial recognition scan on his social media photos against mugshot databases, I got a hit. His name was not Grant Sutter. It was Greg Salinger. And before that, it was Gary Stone. He had a history of involvement in Ponzi schemes in Florida and Arizona. He had never been convicted. He was too smart for that, always staying just on the side of bad business advice rather than overt theft, or disappearing before the indictments came down. But the pattern was clear. He targeted vulnerable women with inheritance money, promised them the world, drained their accounts, and vanished. I invited them back a week later. I did not cook dinner. I just put a manila folder on the table. The answer is no, I said. Blair looked like she was about to cry. You did not even read the proposal. I read his rap sheet, I said, sliding the folder toward Grant. Grant did not flinch. He did not open the folder. He just smiled that tight, condescending smile. I have made some mistakes in my youth, he said smoothly. I have changed. Blair knows about my past. I know he was persecuted by jealous partners, Blair yelled. She had been coached. You are just jealous, Emery. You are jealous that I have someone who loves me and you have… What? Your spreadsheets? Your cat? He is conning you. Blair, I said, my voice rising. He needs $250,000 to pay off a judgment in Scottsdale. I saw the filing. He is using you to wash his debt. Shut up, Blair slammed her hands on the table. You think you are so superior because Mom and Dad trusted you, but they did not trust you. Emery, they used you. They knew you were too scared to live, so they made you the watchdog. I am protecting this family, I said. Grant stood up. He walked over to me, leaning down so his face was inches from mine. He smelled of expensive cologne and rot. You are confused about your role. Emery, he whispered, you are just the safekeeper. You are the lock on the vault, but you are not the owner. Owners change locks. Get out, I said. Grant straightened his jacket and walked to the door. Blair lingered for a moment. She looked at me with a hatred so pure, so toxic. It made my stomach turn. You ruin everything, she hissed. I could finally be happy. We could finally be free of this allowance you dole out like I am a child. I am keeping you from being homeless, I said tiredly. She laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. You are not keeping me safe. You are standing in my way. You know, Grant is right. It is not fair that one person holds the pen. She opened the door to leave, but then she stopped and looked back. Her eyes were dead. It would be so much easier if you just disappeared, she said. It was not a scream. It was a statement of fact. She said it with the same tone one would use to say, it would be easier if it stopped raining. I watched her get into Grant's car. I watched them drive away. That night, I checked the locks on my doors 3 times. I told myself it was just anger. I told myself she was just lashing out because I cut off her supply. But deep down, the investigator in me started to catalog the anomalies. The way Grant had looked at the house layout, the way Blair had asked about my life insurance policy a month prior, claiming she wanted to update the family records. I realized then that they did not just want the $250,000. That was just the starter. They realized that as long as I was alive, the millions in the trust were untouchable. I was the wall. And you do not climb a wall when you are in a hurry. You blow it up. I should have gone to the police then, but I thought, she is my sister. She hates me, but she is not a killer. I was wrong. The accident with our parents should have been my first clue. If a steering column can fail on a boat, a railing can fail in a boathouse. The script was already written. I was just waiting for my cue to die. The Tuesday night it happened. The sky was a bruised purple, heavy with a storm that refused to break. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and the briny rot of the harbor. I should have stayed in the main house with the doors locked and the alarm set, but Blair had sent a text message at 7 o'clock that felt like a surrender. I am tired of fighting. Grant and I want to sign the papers. We agreed to the monthly stipend. Just come to the boathouse so we can get the signatures done and move on. Please. It was the please that did it. Blair never said please. It sounded like defeat, and God help me. I wanted to believe that the war was over. I wanted my sister back, even a version of her that was only civil because she was broke. I put on my raincoat and walked down the gravel path to the boathouse. The structure was a century-old barn that our grandfather had converted for boat repair. It sat right on the water's edge, smelling of cedar and gasoline. I had been renovating it for the last 3 months, turning the cavernous ground floor into a workshop and the upper mezzanine into a forensic accounting studio. It was my sanctuary. I knew every creaking board, every drafty window, or so I thought. When I slid the heavy barn door open, the interior was dimly lit by a few construction work lights clamped to the beams. Shadows stretched long and jagged across the concrete floor. Grant was already there. That was my first warning. Grant Sutter does not do dusty construction sites. He was wearing a navy raincoat that looked pristine, his shoes polished to a mirror shine that reflected the harsh work lights. He was standing by the stairs that led up to the mezzanine, holding a leather portfolio. "Emery," he said, his voice echoing in the hollow space. "Thank you for coming." "Where is Blair?" I asked, staying near the door. My hand was in my pocket, gripping my phone. "Upstairs," Grant gestured to the loft. "Looking at the view. It really is a prime location. You could subdivide this lot and sell the waterfront access for $3 million. Easy. We are not selling, I said, walking past him. Let us get this over with. I felt a false sense of security. I knew that high up in the rafters, hidden inside an old, rusted hurricane lantern that I had wired for electricity, was a high-definition security camera. I had installed it 2 weeks ago after some lumber went missing. It had a wide-angle lens that covered the entire interior. I thought, if they try anything stupid, it is recorded. I did not realize that recording a crime is not the same as preventing one. I climbed the wooden stairs. The mezzanine was an open platform that overlooked the main floor, railed off by a heavy oak balustrade. Blair was standing near the edge, looking down at the dark water churning below the open bay doors. She turned when I reached the top. Her face was pale, tight. She did not look like someone who was there to make peace. She looked like someone waiting for an explosion. Do you have the papers? I asked. Grant has them, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Grant came up the stairs behind me. The space suddenly felt very small. The mezzanine was only 10 feet by 12 feet. I was in the middle. Blair was by the water side. Grant was blocking the stairs. Standard agreement, Grant said, opening the portfolio and handing me a stack of documents. Modification of the trust distribution schedule. We agree to the capped allowance in exchange for a lump sum release of $50,000 for debt settlement. I took the papers. I clicked my pen. I started to read. Page 1 was standard. Page 2 was standard. Then I flipped to page 3. The text was dense, but my eyes are trained to spot anomalies. The header did not say trust modification. It said durable power of attorney for healthcare. I froze. I read the clauses. It assigned Blair Hernandez full authority to make medical decisions on my behalf in the event of incapacitation, superseding any previous directives. It gave her the power to choose treatments, select facilities, and crucially, withdraw life support. My blood ran cold. This is not the trust agreement, I said, looking up. This is a medical proxy. It is just a formality, Grant said, taking a step closer. Part of the estate consolidation. If something happens to you, we need to be able to manage the accounts without probate interference. It is standard risk management. I am 34 years old, I said, backing away. I am not signing this, and I am not giving you control over my body. I dropped the papers on the floor. I am done, I said. The deal is off. Get out of my property. I turned to head for the stairs. Blair moved. She did not come at me, but she shifted to her left, effectively cutting off the direct line to the staircase. It seemed accidental, a nervous shuffle, but it forced me to step wide, toward the edge of the platform where the railing overlooked the concrete floor below. Emery, wait, Blair said. Just listen. No, I said. I stepped around her. The floor beneath me vibrated. It was a subtle shudder, like a bolt giving way under stress. I was standing next to the oak railing. It was solid. I had leaned on it 100 times watching the sunset. As I tried to squeeze past Blair, my shoulder brushed against the top rail. I put my hand out to steady myself, the moment my weight transferred to the wood. The world ended. There was no crack of splintering wood. There was just a smooth, sickening clunk as the entire section of the railing swung outward. It had been unbolted. The lag screws that held it to the support beams had been removed, leaving it balancing there, a trap waiting for a feather's weight to trigger it. My hand grasped at empty air. My center of gravity pitched forward. I saw Blair's eyes. They were wide, watching me. She did not reach out. She did not scream. She just watched. I fell. The drop was only 12 feet, but I landed badly. I hit the concrete floor with a sound that I will never forget. A wet, dense crunch, like a melon being dropped from a roof. My head snapped back, slamming into the hard surface. Then there was silence. I tried to gasp for air, but my lungs refused to inflate. It was as if the impact had knocked the very concept of breathing out of my body. I tried to push myself up. Nothing happened. My arms did not move. My legs did not move. I could see the rafters above me, spinning in a dizzying vortex, but I could not feel the cold floor beneath me. I could not feel my fingers. I was a head attached to a dead weight. Panic, cold and absolute, washed over me. I was paralyzed. High above me, on the edge of the mezzanine, two faces appeared. They looked down at me like scientists observing a specimen in a jar. "Is she dead?" Blair's voice floated down. It sounded terrified, but also hopeful. "No," Grant's voice replied. He sounded clinically detached. "I can see her eyes moving. She is in shock, spinal injury, likely high cervical given the angle of the neck." "Oh my God," Blair whimpered. "Oh my God. Grant, we have to call 911. "Not yet," Grant said. "Wait. She is not moving." "Exactly," Grant said. "If we call now, she might still be able to talk when the paramedics get here. She might be able to say the railing was loose. We need to wait until the swelling compresses the vocal cords, or until she loses consciousness. But she could die." "That is the point. Blair," Grant said, "if she dies, you inherit the trust. If she lives as a vegetable, you get power of attorney, and we drain the trust. Either way, we win, but only if we wait." I lay there, staring up at them. My vision was starting to tunnel, the edges turning black. I wanted to scream, to beg, to curse them, but my diaphragm was paralyzed. I was drowning in plain air. 5 minutes, Grant said, looking at his watch. "We wait 5 minutes, then you make the call. You will be the hysterical sister who found her after she fell. You warned her that the railing was old. It was a tragic accident." "She is looking at me," Blair whispered. "Grant, she is looking right at me." "Let her look," Grant said. His voice was the last thing I heard clearly before the darkness swallowed me. "When she is breathing through a plastic tube, your signature will finish what gravity started." I focused on the lantern hanging above them. The tiny red light of the camera was not visible to the naked eye, but I knew it was there. I held on to that thought as the gray fog rolled in. "I am watching you too." Then, everything went black. Detective Klein returned to my ICU room. 4 hours later, the sky outside the window had turned a deep, bruised charcoal, signaling the approach of night. But inside, the fluorescent lights hummed with an aggressive brightness. Klein looked different this time. The fatigue was still there, etched into the lines around her eyes, but the slouch was gone. She walked with the kinetic energy of a hunter who had just found the blood trail. She pulled a chair close to my bed, invading the sterile zone that Nurse Monroe had established. "We executed the search warrant," Klein said, her voice low and tight. "Based on Dr. Price's testimony regarding the interference with your life support and your statement about the boathouse. A judge signed off on it within an hour. We tore that boathouse apart." "Emery," I could not nod, so I blinked. "Tell me." "You were right about the lantern," she said. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. The lantern was my secret. It was a rusted, vintage hurricane lamp hanging from the central beam of the mezzanine. Seemingly just a piece of nautical decor to match the aesthetic of the renovation. But inside the glass chimney, hidden behind the soot-stained metal housing, I had rigged a high-definition motion sensor camera. I installed it 3 weeks ago after I noticed some copper wiring had gone missing. I never expected it to record my own murder. "We found the camera unit inside the housing," Klein continued. She paused, and her expression darkened. "But the SD card slot was empty." My heart hammered against my ribs. Empty? If the card was gone, the footage was gone. Grant must have found it. He was thorough. He was paranoid. If he destroyed the card, it was just my word against theirs. And I was the drug-addled sister with a head injury. Klein saw the panic in my eyes and held up a hand. "Wait, I did not say the evidence was gone. I said the slot was empty." She leaned in closer. "We found the memory card. It was not in the lantern. It was in a red metal toolbox on the workbench downstairs. A toolbox with the initials G.S. stenciled on the side." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Grant. Grant had found the camera. He must have seen the glint of the lens or noticed the tiny LED indicator I thought I had taped over sufficiently. He had climbed up there, removed the card, and hidden it in his own personal property. Why? Why not destroy it? Why not throw it into the harbor? Then, the realization dawned on me, cold and logical. Leverage. Grant Sutter was a con man, and con men never trust their partners. He kept the card as insurance, if Blair ever got cold feet, or if she tried to cut him out of the inheritance once I was dead. He had the video. He could prove she was an accomplice. He was holding on to the evidence of our murder to blackmail my sister later. It was twisted. Evil genius. He thought he was smart, Klein said. Reading my expression, he thought hiding it in his toolbox gave him power, but he made one critical mistake. He did not know about the cloud sync. I closed my eyes in relief. Yes. The camera was not just a local recorder. It was a smart device connected to the boathouse's hidden Wi-Fi network. Every time the motion sensor triggered, it uploaded a 30-second clip to a secure, encrypted server that only I could access. Grant could steal the physical card, but he could not steal the data that had already been beamed into the ether. I need your password, Emery, Klein said, taking out a notepad. We have the card, but the chain of custody will be attacked by their lawyers because it was found in a common area. But if we can pull the time-stamped backup from your cloud account, it is ironclad. I blinked out the code using an alphabet board the speech therapist had left earlier. It was slow, agonizing work. But Klein was patient. BLUEHERON99. Klein typed it into her tablet. A moment later, she nodded. I am in. She turned the screen so I could see. The video was grainy, shot in the high-contrast black and white of night vision, but the clarity was undeniable. The timestamp read Tuesday, 7:14 p.m. The frame showed the mezzanine. Grant was there, kneeling by the railing. He was not admiring the view. He was using a wrench. I watched, my stomach churning, as he methodically loosened the bolts securing the oak balustrade to the floor joists. He did not remove them entirely. He just backed them out enough so that the wood held by friction, but would give way under pressure. Then, the camera captured Blair. She was standing 3 feet away, watching him. She was not helping, but she was not stopping him. She was pacing, wringing her hands, looking at the stairs. Then the audio kicked in. It was tinny, but audible. Is it ready? Blair's voice whispered from the tablet speakers. It is ready, Grant's voice replied, calm and professional. Just make sure she goes to the left. You have to block the stairs so she swings wide. I do not know if I can watch, Blair said. You do not have to watch, Grant said. You just have to stand there. Do you want the money or not? Do you want her looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life? Blair did not answer, but she stopped pacing. She took her position. Then, the video skipped forward to 7:28 p.m. I saw myself enter the frame. I saw the hesitation in my body language. I saw the conversation. And then, I saw the moment. I tried to pass Blair. She stepped left, blocking my path, forcing me toward the rigged section. It was subtle, a small shift of her hips, but on camera, it looked deliberate. It looked like a shepherd guiding a sheep into a pen. I saw my hand reach out. I saw the railing detach. I saw my body disappear over the edge. And then, the most damning part, Grant walked to the edge and looked down. He did not rush. He did not panic. Don't call yet. The audio picked up his voice clearly. Give it 5 minutes. Klein paused the video. Her face was set in stone. That is premeditated attempted murder, she said. Conspiracy, tampering with evidence, and with the medical interference today, we have them. Emery, we have them dead to rights. She put the tablet away. We also pulled Grant's financials, she added. He has been busy. While you were in a coma, he initiated 3 transfers from your sister's personal account to a shell company in the Cayman Islands. He was not just going to kill you, He was going to drain Blair dry and leave her to take the fall for your death. He is a predator in every sense of the word. Get him, I mouthed. I am going to, Klein promised. I have officers at the boathouse securing the scene. I am heading down to the waiting room now to place them both under arrest. They are still there, supposedly waiting for news on your condition. Blair thinks she can talk her way out of the medical proxy issue. She has no idea we have the video. Klein stood up, adjusting her holster. You rest, Emery. When you wake up, they will be in a cell. She walked out of the room, and I felt a wave of exhaustion crash over me. It was over. The truth was out. The evidence was safe, but I should have known better. I should have known that a cornered animal bites, and a woman like Blair, who had spent her entire life manipulating reality to suit her needs, would not go down without one final, desperate swing. 10 minutes passed. I was drifting into a light sleep, the rhythm of the ventilator lulling me. When the door to my room opened again, it was not Klein. It was a process server, a stranger in a cheap suit, looking uncomfortable. He was followed by a woman with a severe haircut and a briefcase, Blair's lawyer, Elena Vance. Nurse Monroe stepped in front of them immediately. You cannot be in here. This is a restricted area. We are serving legal notice, Ms. Vance said, her voice sharp. She did not look at me. She looked at the chart at the end of the bed. My client, Ms. Blair Hernandez, has filed an emergency petition with the probate court. Get out, Monroe warned. Or I call security. You can call them, Vance said, dropping a thick envelope onto the bedside table. But this is a court order signed by Judge Holloway 20 minutes ago. It is an emergency guardianship filing. I forced my eyes open. Guardianship? Ms. Hernandez alleges that her sister, Emery Hernandez, has a history of opioid abuse and paranoid delusions, rendering her incompetent to manage her own affairs or make medical decisions, Vance recited. She has submitted affidavits claiming that the accident was a suicide attempt until a competency hearing is held. All personal and financial assets of the patient are frozen, and Ms. Blair Hernandez is appointed temporary guardian ad litem. My blood ran cold. They were not fighting the murder charge yet. They were trying to silence the victim. If I was legally declared incompetent, my testimony about the video, my accusations, everything could be thrown out or buried by a guardian. Blair was using the legal system to gag me before the police could slap the cuffs on her. Klein was in the waiting room arresting them for murder. But Blair's lawyer had been at the courthouse filing paperwork to own me. The race was not over. It had just moved from the boathouse to the courtroom, and I was still unable to speak. The legal system in America is a magnificent machine, but it is slow, and my sister knew exactly how to throw sand in the gears. Despite Detective Klein's confidence, Blair was not rotting in a cell 3 days later. She was out on bail, a substantial sum posted by utilizing the very equity of the boathouse she had tried to kill me for. The video evidence was damning, but her lawyer, the shark-like Elena Vance, had argued that the footage was grainy, inconclusive, and potentially contextually misleading. They managed to buy her freedom pending a grand jury indictment, and in that window of freedom, Blair did not hide. She went on the offensive. I lay in my hospital bed, regaining sensation in my fingers, but still unable to speak more than a raspy whisper. Watching the character assassination unfold on the television mounted on the wall, Blair was giving a statement on the courthouse steps. She wore no makeup. She looked exhausted, a perfect picture of a martyr. My sister Emery has been struggling for years, Blair told the bank of microphones, wiping a non-existent tear. Since our parents died, she has battled severe depression and a dependency on prescription painkillers. I have tried to protect her privacy, but this paranoia, accusing me of hurting her, it is a delusion born of withdrawal and trauma. I love her, and I just want to get her the psychiatric help she needs. It was a masterstroke of evil. She was not denying the fall. She was reframing the victim. If she could convince the world I was a drug-addled paranoid, then the loosened railing wasn't a murder trap. It was something I did myself in a psychotic break, or an accident I was now twisting to punish her. The narrative spread like a virus. Rich girl's pill addiction leads to tragic fall. The headlines were already written. Inside the hospital, the war was quieter but more dangerous. Grant Sutter was still lurking on the periphery. He could not come near my room due to the restraining order. But he did not need to be physical to hurt me. He needed my medical records. If they could plant evidence of opioid abuse, a forged prescription history, a falsified blood test, they could substantiate Blair's lies in court. Dr. Nolan Price caught them at 2:00 in the morning on Thursday. He was reviewing my digital chart when he noticed a flag. A user logged in from the billing department, a junior administrator named Kevin, who had no reason to be accessing the raw toxicology reports. The system showed that Kevin was trying to upload a PDF file into my history, a file dated 6 months prior from a clinic I had never visited. Dr. Price did not just block the upload. He called Keisha Monroe. Keisha went down to the billing department herself. She found Kevin sweating, staring at his screen. He confessed within 30 seconds. A man with a smooth voice had offered him $5,000 just to update a missing file. They logged the IP address of the solicitor. It traced back to a burner phone, but the timing matched Grant's movements perfectly. They did not tell the police immediately. They kept the log. They were building a firewall around me, but they could not stop the mail. The letter arrived in a pastel envelope, delivered by a courier service. Keisha opened it for me, wearing latex gloves to preserve fingerprints. Though we both knew Blair was too smart to leave physical traces of anything illegal, it was handwritten. Dearest Emery, I forgive you. I know you are confused right now. I know the drugs make you think terrible things about me, but I promised Mom and Dad I would take care of you, and I will not let you destroy yourself. I have filed for emergency guardianship. It is for your own good. Once I'm in charge of your care, we can move you to a private facility in Vermont. They are very discreet. Drop this silly investigation. If you force me to prove your incompetence in open court, everyone will know about your episodes. Let me help you. Love, Blair. It was not an apology, it was a threat. Private facility in Vermont meant a locked ward where I would be medicated into oblivion, unable to testify, unable to access the trust. While she drained my accounts dry, she was offering me a choice, silence or an asylum. I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. I was physically weak. My voice was barely a croak. If I went before a judge looking like this, unable to articulate my defense, against a polished, weeping sister claiming I was crazy, I would lose. I needed a shark of my own. I asked Dr. Price to make a call, not to the police, but to a number I had memorized years ago. Tessa Vaughn walked into my room that evening. She did not look like a lawyer. She looked like a hurricane in a trench coat. We had gone to college together. She was a civil litigator who specialized in hostile corporate takeovers, a woman who ate stress for breakfast. She read Blair's letter. She read the guardianship filing. She looked at me. She is trying to bury you alive, Tessa said, tossing the papers onto the tray table. She is using the probate code as a weapon. Emergency guardianship is designed to help grandmothers with dementia, not to silence murder witnesses, but it is effective. If the judge grants this temporary order tomorrow, she controls your medical team. She could fire Dr. Price and hire a quack who keeps you sedated. Stop her, I wheezed. I am going to do more than stop her, Tessa said, opening her briefcase. I am going to file a counter-petition for an independent guardian ad litem. We are going to argue that there is a severe conflict of interest given the pending criminal investigation, but we need a smoking gun to kill this guardianship application immediately. She started sifting through the evidence Dr. Price had provided. She picked up the copy of the medical power of attorney, the document Blair had waved around the ICU on the first day, the one she claimed gave her the right to pull the plug. Tessa frowned. She held the paper up to the light. She pulled a jeweler's loupe from her bag. She always carried one for inspecting fine print, and peered at the signature block. Emery, Tessa said slowly. Look at this date. I looked. The document was dated 3 years ago. Now look at the notary stamp, she said. I squinted. The stamp was blurry. A standard state seal. The commission expiration date on this stamp is from last year, Tessa said, her voice dropping. But look at the font. The state of New Hampshire changed the font on their official notary seals 18 months ago to prevent forgery. This stamp uses the new font, but the document is dated 3 years ago. My eyes widened. It is a paste-up, Tessa grinned, a predatory showing of teeth. She took a valid signature page from some other contract you signed, probably a tax document, and digitally pasted it onto this medical proxy. Then she photoshopped a notary stamp to make it look official. But she used the wrong graphic. It is a forgery, a bad one. She faked it, I rasped. She faked it because she never had power of attorney, Tessa said. She tried to kill you legally with a Photoshop job. If I present this to the probate judge tomorrow, not only is the guardianship denied, but she gets slapped with another felony for fraud upon the court. Tessa pulled out her phone to call the district attorney. But she paused. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. She looked at the screen, and her smile vanished. What? I asked. It is Grant, she said. Arrested? No, Tessa said, turning the screen to me. Gone. The news report showed a marina in Boston. Police tape was everywhere. Grant Sutter, a person of interest in the Hernandez case, is currently at large. Police raided his rented condominium an hour ago but found the premises empty. He ran, I whispered. He did not just run, Tessa said, reading the scrolling text. He cleared out, but look at this last line. Police report that several high-security safe deposit boxes registered to the Hernandez Family Trust were accessed remotely using an administrative key just minutes before the suspect fled. My heart stopped. The administrative key. Blair did not have that key. I had that key. It was a digital encryption token kept in a safe inside the boathouse. Grant hadn't just been hiding the memory card in his toolbox. He had been looking for the master token, and while Blair was busy playing the victim on TV and filing lawsuits to lock me up, Grant had used the chaos to bypass the $250,000 they originally wanted. He had stolen the identity of the entire trust. He had left Blair alone on the battlefield to face the murder charges and the fraud charges, while he vanished into the wind with the keys to an empire worth millions. He didn't care if she went to prison. In fact, he was counting on it. He played her, I said, the realization settling in. He played us all. He thinks he is gone, Tessa said, snapping her briefcase shut. But he made a mistake. He accessed a trust account. That makes it a federal crime. And I know the best forensic accountant in the state. She looked at me. You? I looked at the ceiling. Blair was going to go down for murder. But Grant? Grant was going to be my personal project. Get me laptop, I told Tessa. The war for my life was ending. The hunt for my legacy was just beginning. Rehabilitation was a different kind of hell than the ICU. The ICU was about survival. Rehab was about humiliation. I spent my mornings learning how to hold a spoon again, my fingers trembling like autumn leaves as I tried to lift plastic utensils to my mouth. But the hardest part was the speech therapy, the muscles in my throat, damaged by the prolonged intubation and the trauma of the fall, felt atrophied. Say apple, the therapist would coax. Apple, I would croak, the sound scraping against my larynx like sandpaper. But while my body was slow, my mind was accelerating. It was sharpening into a weapon. They thought they had broken me. They thought that by pushing me off a ledge and burying me under legal filings, I would curl up and fade away. They forgot who I was. I am not just a trust fund baby. I am a forensic accountant. I hunt liars for a living. If they like paperwork, I rasped to Tessa Vaughn one afternoon, forcing the words out one by one. I will drown them in it, Tessa smiled, tapping her pen against her legal pad. That is the spirit. Judge Holloway denied the emergency guardianship yesterday. The forgery I found on the medical proxy was enough to make him furious. Blair is still out on bail, but she has lost her bid to control you. However, we have a bigger problem, the money. Grant, I whispered. Exactly, Tessa said. Grant is in the wind, and he has the administrative digital key to the trust. He can't drain the principal without a countersign, but he can bleed the interest accounts dry if we do not stop him. I motioned for the laptop Tessa had smuggled in for me. My fingers were stiff, but I could type. I opened the terminal. I closed my eyes and went back to the boathouse. I replayed the audio in my head, not the recording, but the memory. Grant had been so specific. He hadn't just been talking about killing me. He had said, "We are approaching a critical financial timeline. And later, when she is breathing by machine, the signature will do the rest." Why the rush? Why that specific Tuesday? I started digging. I bypassed the standard banking interfaces and went straight for the corporate registry databases. I ran a search on Grant's aliases. Nothing. Then I ran a search on the shell company he had used to transfer the money from Blair's account, Azure Coast Development, LLC. It was a classic structure. Azure Coast was owned by Red Rock Capital, which was owned by Horizon Trust, which was registered in a post office box in Delaware. It was a nesting doll of deception, but every shell company needs a fake asset to justify the movement of funds. They all pointed to one project, the Serenity Marina extension. I pulled up the satellite imaging for the address listed in the prospectus. There was no marina. There was just a swamp in Florida and a rusted pier. "It is a Ponzi scheme," I typed, showing the screen to Tessa. "He is not investing. He is paying off previous investors. The timeline. He has a balloon payment due to a shark in Phoenix in 48 hours. That is why he needed the quick cash from my trust. He is desperate," Tessa realized. "He is not running with the money. He is running for money. He is broke." "We trap him," I said. We called Detective Klein and Doctor. Price into the room. It was a war council. "He has the digital key," I explained, my voice gaining a little more strength with the adrenaline. "But he cannot use it remotely to transfer more than $10,000 without a physical authentication token, the hardware token. It is in the safety deposit box at the bank." "The bank is watching for him," Klein said. "He won't go there." "He won't," I agreed. "But he thinks Blair can." We hatched the plan. It was risky, but it was the only way to flush him out before he disappeared overseas. We had to make him believe that the plan was still on. We had to make him believe that I was weak, that Blair was winning, and that the money was within reach. "We need a leak," Tessa said. "We need someone to tell Blair that you are crumbling, that you are willing to sign a settlement to stop the media circus." Keisha Monroe stepped forward from the doorway. "I have the leak." She brought in Kevin, the terrified administrative assistant from the billing department who had tried to falsify my records. He looked like he was about to vomit. He was facing felony charges, but Klein had offered him a deal. "Help us," and we dropped the charges to a misdemeanor. "Call him," Klein ordered Kevin. "Use the burner number he contacted you with." Kevin's hands shook as he dialed. He put it on speaker. "Yes," Grant's voice answered. He sounded tense, wind noise in the background. "Mr. Sutter? It is Kevin," the boy stammered. "From the hospital. You told me to keep you updated." "I told you to delete the file, you idiot," Grant hissed. I did, Kevin lied, looking at Keisha for reassurance. "But listen, something is happening. The lawyers, they are in the room right now. I heard them talking. The sister, Emery, she is crying. She is saying she cannot take the pressure anymore. She wants to sign." Silence on the other end. Then, "Sign what?" "A settlement," Kevin said, reading the script Tessa had written. "She agrees to drop the investigation if Blair leaves her alone. She is going to release the hold on the trust assets tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. But she wants the papers signed tonight, to get it over with." "Tonight?" Grant asked. "Where?" She is sending a courier with the notary packet, Kevin said. To the parking structure on 4th Street, Level C, 8 o'clock. I will send someone, Grant said. Click. The trap was set. We knew Grant wouldn't show up himself. He was too cowardly. He would send Blair, and that was fine. If we could catch Blair meeting a courier to pick up settlement documents that were actually a sting operation, we could prove she was still actively conspiring with him. We could flip her. Doctor, Price added one final nail to the coffin. I finished my report for the district attorney, he told me as the sun began to set. I clarified the medical context of Blair's signature on that withdrawal form, because you were not brain dead, and because the prognosis was recovery. Her signing that order wasn't just withdrawal of care, in medical legal terms, knowing the outcome would be immediate hypoxia and death. It is classified as active euthanasia without consent. That is a fancy way of saying homicide. She signed a murder weapon, I whispered. Exactly. Doctor, Price nodded. At 7:30 that evening, Detective Klein left for the parking structure. I stayed in my room, staring at the clock. Tick, tock, every second felt like an hour. At 8:15, my phone buzzed. It was Klein. We have movement, she said. A silver sedan just pulled up to the drop point. Is it Blair? I asked. The windows are tinted, Klein whispered. Subject is exiting the vehicle. Wait. What? It is not Blair, Klein said, her voice confused. And it is not Grant. Who is it? It is a woman, middle-aged. She looks terrified. She is holding a notary stamp. My mind raced. A notary? Why would Grant send a notary? Bring her in, I said. Moving in, Klein said. I heard the shout of, police, and the scuffle of feet through the phone speaker. 10 minutes later, Klein called back. Her voice was grim. Emery, you need to hear this. We detained the woman. Her name is Sarah Jenkins. She isn't just a random notary. She is the one who notarized the transfer of the deed to your parents' house 4 years ago. My parents' house? I asked. That went into the trust. That is what the paperwork says, Klein said. But Sarah is talking. She says she didn't want to come tonight, but Grant threatened her. She says she knows where the bodies are buried. Literally. What does she mean? She says Grant didn't just target you, Klein said. She says the accident with your parents, the boat. She says she saw Grant on the dock that morning, and he wasn't alone. He was with Blair, and they were arguing about a life insurance policy that expired 24 hours later. I felt the room spin. It wasn't just about the trust. It wasn't just about the boathouse. They had killed my parents. And this woman, this terrified notary in a parking garage, was the witness who had stayed silent for 4 years. Grant hadn't sent her to pick up papers. He had sent her to silence her, thinking he was sending her into a trap he could blame on me. He had tried to get rid of a loose end. Bring her to me, I said, my voice cold as ice. I want to look her in the eye. The game had just changed. It was no longer about theft. It was about vengeance. Sarah Jenkins sat in the hard plastic chair next to my bed, clutching her purse like a shield. She was a small woman, 60 years old maybe, with hair dyed a harsh shade of burgundy and hands that would not stop trembling. She did not look like a criminal mastermind. She looked like a grandmother who had been caught shoplifting. I did not want to come, she whispered, refusing to meet my eyes. He told me if I did not pick up the package, he would send the photos to my husband. He has photos of me taking cash bribes from 3 years ago. I do not care about your bribes, Sarah, I said. My voice was stronger now, fueled by a cold, sharp anger. I want to know about the papers you notarized, the ones Grant forced my sister to sign. Sarah looked up then, and I saw genuine terror in her eyes. It wasn't just one document, it was a transfer of power, complete, durable power of attorney over the entire Hernandez trust. He made her sign it 2 days ago in his car. Blair would never sign that, I said. She is greedy, but she is possessive. She wants the money for herself. She was terrified, Sarah said. He was screaming at her. He told her that you were going to wake up and send her to prison. He said the only way out was to liquidate the assets, take the cash, and run to a non-extradition country. He told her he had a boat waiting. A boat? Detective Klein stepped forward from the shadows of the room. What boat? He has a slip at the Privateer Marina, Sarah said. He keeps a 40-foot cruiser there. He calls it the exit strategy. He told Blair they were leaving tonight at midnight. Klein immediately radioed her team. Get a unit to the Privateer Marina. Secure the perimeter. Do not let any vessel leave the harbor. But Sarah wasn't finished. She turned back to me, her eyes pleading. You have to understand. Ms. Hernandez, he does not just want the money. It is a game to him. I saw his notebook once. When he left it on the dashboard, he has a list. A list of what? I asked. Women, Sarah said, her voice dropping to a haunt. Widows, heiresses, single women with trust funds. He had names crossed out. Next to some names, he wrote paid. Next to others, he wrote expired. A chill went down my spine that had nothing to do with the hospital air conditioning. I wasn't just a victim of greed. I was a line item on a serial killer's spreadsheet. Blair is in custody downstairs, Klein said, holstering her radio. We picked her up trying to leave the parking garage. I am going to have a conversation with her. You want to watch? She held up her tablet. I nodded. 5 minutes later, I was watching a live feed from Interrogation Room B. Blair was sitting at a metal table, still wearing her designer coat, but she looked dismantled. Her makeup was smeared, her hair was a mess, and the arrogance that usually defined her was gone, replaced by a frantic, wet panic. I am a victim here, Blair shrieked, slamming her hand on the table. Grant Sutter is a psychopath. He manipulated me. He told me he loved me. He manipulated you into loosening a railing? Klein asked. Sitting opposite her, her voice was calm, dangerous. I did not touch the railing, Blair cried. He did it. I tried to stop him. We have the video. Blair, Klein said, you blocked the stairs. You herded your sister toward the drop. That is not stopping him. That is hunting with him. I was scared, Blair sobbed. He said if I did not help him, he would kill me too. I had to do it. I had no choice. You always have a choice, Klein said. Like you had a choice in the ICU. Tell me about the ventilator. Blair, tell me about the rush to turn it off. Blair froze. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. The doctor said she was brain dead. I was showing mercy. The doctor said she had reflexes, Klein corrected. Doctor, Price testified that he explicitly told you recovery was possible. But you insisted. You signed a directive to withdraw life support against medical advice. Why the rush? Blair, was Grant waiting in the lobby with a stopwatch? He said we needed the death certificate, Blair whispered. The admission hung in the air like smoke. He said the bank needed the certificate by 5 o'clock to clear the transfer. He said if Emery woke up, we would lose everything. So you agreed to kill your sister for a wire transfer, Klein said. No, Blair screamed. I did it to save us. He said he would hurt us if we didn't pay him. I was protecting the family legacy. Klein placed a piece of paper on the table. We tracked the IP address that accessed the hospital records to try and frame Emery as a drug addict. It came from a laptop registered to Grant Sutter. But the login credentials? They were yours. Blair, you gave him your password. I gave him everything, Blair wailed. I gave him the codes. I gave him the keys. I even gave him the combination to the wall safe in the study. I watched the screen, my brow furrowing. The wall safe? The safe is empty. Blair, I said to the screen, though she could not hear me. We emptied it after the funeral. There is nothing in there but deed copies. Klein seemed to catch the anomaly too. What was in the safe, Blair? Why did Grant want access to an empty box? Blair looked up, confused. It wasn't empty. I never told Emery. I kept things in there, Mom's jewelry, some cash, and the envelope. What envelope? Klein pressed. The one Mom put in there before the accident. Blair sniffled. She told me never to open it unless something happened to them. But when they died, I opened it. It was just a letter and some stupid technology thing. I didn't think it mattered. Describe the thing, Klein ordered. A USB drive, Blair said dismissively. A silver Kingston drive. I tried to plug it into my laptop years ago, but it was encrypted. It wouldn't open, so I just threw it back in the safe and forgot about it. I told Grant it was junk. My heart stopped beating for a second. A USB drive. My father was an architect who drew on paper. My mother was a technophobe who barely knew how to text. They did not use USB drives, and if they did, they certainly didn't encrypt them. Did Grant take the drive? Klein asked, leaning forward. I don't know, Blair said. He cleaned out the safe this morning while I was getting dressed for court. He said he was taking the insurance. I thought he meant the jewelry. I grabbed the tablet. My fingers white-knuckled. Klein, I rasped into the speakerphone connection. The USB? It isn't junk. My parents didn't use encryption. If that drive is encrypted, it means they hired someone to lock it. It contains something they were terrified of losing. Klein looked at the camera. Hearing my voice in her earpiece, she understood immediately. He is not running for money, Klein said, standing up. He is running with the evidence. That drive is the leverage he has been looking for. Go, I commanded. Get to the marina. Klein ran out of the interrogation room. I watched Blair sitting alone at the metal table, weeping into her hands, completely unaware that she had just handed the police the final piece of the puzzle. She thought she was the villain of the story, but she was just a pawn. The real game had been played right under her nose for 4 years. The scene cut to the dash cam of Klein's cruiser. Sirens wailed as they tore through the city streets toward the waterfront. The timestamp on the video read 11:48 p.m. ETA 2 minutes, Klein shouted over the radio. Harbor Patrol, do you have eyes on the vessel? Negative, the radio crackled back. Fog is heavy. Visibility is near zero. We are sweeping the slips now. I watched, helpless in my hospital bed, as the cruiser screeched to a halt at the privateer marina. Officers swarmed the wooden docks, their flashlights cutting through the thick sea mist like lightsabers. They ran down the pier, weapons drawn. They reached slip 42. It was empty. The water in the slip was still churning, white foam swirling against the pilings. The smell of diesel fuel hung heavy in the air. A thick, heavy mooring rope lay on the dock, severed with a knife, the end still fraying. He is gone, an officer shouted. Engine heat signature is fresh. He cast off less than 15 minutes ago. Klein ran to the end of the pier, shining her light into the black void of the Atlantic Ocean. There was nothing but darkness and the sound of waves slapping against the wood. Grant Sutter had slipped the net, and he had taken the USB drive with him. But as I stared at the empty slip on the screen, a memory surfaced, a conversation with my father. Years ago, about boat safety, always have a backup. Emery, technology fails, batteries die. But a signal flare? A signal flare burns no matter what. Grant thought he had escaped. He thought the ocean was big enough to hide him. But he didn't know that my father's boat, the one he had likely stolen or duplicated for this getaway, had a transponder that didn't run on standard GPS. It ran on a localized frequency used by the Coast Guard for search and rescue. And I knew the frequency. The courtroom was a theater of mahogany and silence, smelling faintly of floor wax and stale anxiety. I sat in my wheelchair next to Tessa Vaughn, my hands folded in my lap to hide the tremors that still plagued my motor skills. Across the aisle, at the defense table, Blair sat perfectly upright. She had traded her jail-issue jumpsuit for a modest navy suit, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. She did not look like a woman accused of attempted murder. She looked like a misunderstood saint. The hearing was a chaotic hybrid, a special session convened to address both the emergency guardianship petition and the preliminary evidentiary hearing for the criminal charges. Judge Holloway, a man with eyebrows like bristly caterpillars and zero patience for theatrics, presided over the packed room. Blair's lawyer, Elena Vance, was halfway through her opening statement, pacing the floor like a panther. "Your Honor," Vance said, her voice dripping with sympathetic honey, "we are not here to deny that a tragedy occurred. Emery Hernandez fell. It was horrific, but the state is trying to spin a narrative of malice out of a sister's panic. The prosecution rests its entire case on the confused recollections of a woman recovering from severe brain trauma and a history of substance dependency. We have affidavits from 3 separate psychiatrists stating that opiate withdrawal can cause acute paranoia. Emery fell because she was unstable. Blair was simply trying to catch her." A murmur rippled through the gallery. Blair dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. It was a masterful performance. For a moment, I felt the air in the room shift. They were buying it. They looked at me, frail, broken, sitting in a wheelchair, and they saw a liability, not a victim. Tessa stood up. She did not pace. She did not use flowery language. She simply walked to the center of the room and plugged her laptop into the presentation system. "Your Honor," Tessa said, her voice cutting through the murmurs, "the defense claims the fall was an accident. They claim Ms. Blair Hernandez acted out of love. We would like to introduce Exhibit A, recovered digital forensic evidence from the boathouse security system." Vance jumped up. "Objection! That footage is grainy and unauthenticated." "Overruled," Judge Holloway grunted. "Play it." The lights in the courtroom dimmed. A large projection screen descended behind the witness stand. The video began. It was the stark, high-contrast black and white of night vision. First, the timestamp, 7:14 p.m. The room went dead silent as Grant Sutter appeared on screen. He was kneeling by the railing. The resolution was high enough that everyone could see the wrench in his hand. We watched him turn the bolts, backing them out one by one. We watched him test the railing, wiggling it to ensure it was loose enough to give way, but tight enough to stand upright. Then, Blair walked into the frame. Gasps erupted from the back rows. Blair wasn't panicking. She wasn't trying to stop him. She was standing with her arms crossed, directing him. She pointed to the stairs. She pointed to the drop zone. "Is it ready?" The audio from the speakers was tinny but unmistakable. "It is ready," Grant's voice replied. "Just make sure she goes to the left." I looked at Blair. She had stopped dabbing her eyes. She was staring at the screen, her face drained of all color, her mouth slightly open. The video jumped forward. I walked onto the mezzanine. The courtroom watched the choreography of a murder. They saw Blair step to the side. They saw her block my path. They saw the subtle, deliberate way she forced me toward the edge. And then, they watched me fall. The impact sound, that sickening crunch, echoed through the acoustic panels of the courtroom. Several jurors flinched. One woman covered her mouth, but it was what happened next that sealed her fate. The video showed Grant walking calmly to the edge. It showed Blair looking down, not screaming for help, but waiting. "Don't call yet," Grant's voice filled the room. "Give it 5 minutes. When she breathes by machine," Grant continued, "the signature will do the rest." Tessa paused the video. The freeze frame showed Blair looking down at my broken body with an expression of cold calculation. "That," Tessa said, pointing at the screen, "is not panic, Your Honor. That is patience." Elena Vance sank into her chair. She knew it was over. There is no legal defense for a hot mic recording of a conspiracy to commit murder. Tessa called Dr. Nolan Price to the stand. He walked with a military stride, glaring at Blair as he passed the defense table. "Dr. Price," Tessa asked, "regarding the document Ms. Blair Hernandez signed to withdraw life support, in your professional opinion, was that a medical necessity?" "Absolutely not, Doctor," Price said, speaking into the microphone. "Emery had pupillary reflexes. She was fighting the ventilator. I explicitly informed Ms. Hernandez that recovery was probable. To withdraw support at that stage was contrary to every medical standard. It was not a mercy killing. It was an execution attempt." The jury was scribbling furiously. Next came Kevin, the billing administrator. He was sweating profusely, but he told the truth. He detailed the $5,000 bribe. He explained how Grant had given him Blair's login credentials to plant the fake addiction history. She wanted to discredit her sister, Kevin stammered. She said if we made her look crazy, no one would believe the video. The judge looked at Blair. His expression had shifted from impatience to disgust. "This court has seen enough regarding the guardianship," Judge Holloway said, banging his gavel. "Petition denied with prejudice, but regarding the criminal charges..." Suddenly, the double doors at the back of the courtroom burst open. The bailiff stood up. "Order! Order in the court!" Detective Klein marched in. Behind her, flanked by 2 federal marshals, was a man in an orange jumpsuit, shackled at the wrists and ankles. It was Grant Sutter. He looked ruined. His expensive tan was gone, replaced by a gray, unshaven pallor. He had been caught 3 hours ago, not on a boat, but in a rental car near the Canadian border in Vermont, trying to cross using a passport stolen from a dead man in Arizona. My tip about the boat transponder had forced him to abandon the water and flee on land, right into a police roadblock. "Your Honor," the prosecutor announced, "the state calls a surprise witness, Mr. Greg Salinger, also known as Grant Sutter." Blair stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "No, you cannot let him speak. He is a liar." "Sit down, Ms. Hernandez," the judge roared. Grant was led to the witness stand. He did not look at me. He looked straight at Blair. His eyes were not filled with love or regret. They were filled with the venom of a rat that had been caught in a trap set by its partner. He had made a plea deal in the van on the way over. He was trading information for a life sentence instead of the death penalty. "State your name," the clerk said. "Greg Salinger," he muttered. "Mr. Salinger," the prosecutor said, "did you conspire with Blair Hernandez to kill her sister?" "Yes," Grant said. "It was her idea. She wanted sole control of the trust." "He is lying," Blair shrieked. "He made me do it." "And," the prosecutor continued, ignoring Blair, "was this the first time you two had engaged in such a conspiracy?" Grant smiled then. It was a terrifying, broken smile. He leaned into the microphone. "No," he said softly. "We practiced." The room went so quiet you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. "Practiced on who?" the prosecutor asked. Grant looked at me for the first time. His eyes were dead. "On the parents," he said. A collective gasp sucked the oxygen out of the room. I felt Tessa grab my hand, squeezing it hard. 4 years ago," Grant continued, his voice steady, "Blair came to me. She was in debt. She knew her parents were going to cut her off. She told me about the boat. She told me about the steering column. She gave me the schematics." You bastard!" Blair screamed, lunging toward the witness stand. Her lawyer grabbed her by the waist, wrestling her back. "She paid me $50,000 to loosen the hydraulic line," Grant shouted over the commotion, his voice rising. "She stood on the dock and watched them sail away. She knew they weren't coming back. She killed them. She killed her own parents." "Liar, liar." Blair was hysterical now, thrashing against the marshals who were moving in to restrain her, but it wasn't the denial of a person wrongly accused. It was the primal scream of a person whose deepest, darkest grave had just been dug up. "It is on the drive," Grant yelled, pointing at the evidence table where the silver USB drive sat in an evidence bag. "The schematic, the payment transfer, it is all on the drive. She kept it as a trophy." Blair stopped fighting. She went limp in the marshal's arms. She looked at the USB drive, then at me. Her eyes were wide, terrified. For 4 years, she had played the grieving daughter. For 4 years, she had blamed the ocean, but the ocean hadn't killed David and Maria Hernandez. My sister had. I stared at her, feeling a coldness that went deeper than bone. The railing in the boathouse wasn't just about money. It was about silencing the only person left who could ever find out the truth. She hadn't just tried to kill her sister. She had tried to kill the last witness to her patricide. "Murderer," I whispered. The word was not amplified by a microphone, but in the silence of that courtroom, it hit her like a bullet. Blair collapsed to the floor, wailing, as the judge hammered his gavel, demanding order in a room where order had been shattered forever. The trial concluded with a speed that surprised everyone, largely because Grant Sutter was singing like a canary in exchange for a plea deal that would keep him off death row. He handed over everything. He gave the prosecutors the encrypted chat logs, the wire transfer receipts, and the schematics for the sabotage of my parents' boat. But the final nail in Blair's coffin did not come from Grant. It came from the grave. The silver USB drive that had been hidden in the family safe was not just a storage device for photos. When the forensic team finally bypassed the encryption, which turned out to be a simple combination of my mother's birthday and the name of her favorite rose, the courtroom was stunned into silence. It contained a digital diary. My father, David Hernandez, had been suspicious. 6 months before he died, he had written an entry detailing his fears. He had noticed Blair meeting with a financial consultant he did not recognize. He had noticed withdrawals from petty cash. And most damning of all, he had found a search history on Blair's laptop regarding maritime accident statistics and how to disable a bilge pump. The prosecutor projected the handwritten letter my father had scanned onto the drive. If anything happens to us, the letter read, in my father's jagged script, "Do not trust Blair. She is desperate, and desperation makes her dangerous. Protect Emery. Emery is the only one who understands that money is a tool, not a drug." Blair sat at the defense table, her face ashen. She had lived in that house for 4 years, walked past that safe every day, never knowing that the evidence of her parents' suspicion was sitting right there, waiting to destroy her. But the true devastation was yet to come. Tessa Vaughn stood up for the final phase of the sentencing hearing regarding the assets. She held a thick leather binder, the original trust agreement. "Your Honor," Tessa said, her voice ringing clear in the packed room, "there is one final piece of evidence regarding the motive. The defense argues that Blair Hernandez acted out of financial desperation. She believed that by killing her sister, she would inherit the full estate, valued at roughly $12 million. Tessa turned to look directly at Blair. But she was wrong. Tessa opened the binder to page 42. "My parents added a clause to the trust 4 years ago," Tessa explained. "It is known in legal terms as the Slayer Rule, but they made theirs specific. It states that if any beneficiary is found by a court of law to be complicit in the injury, death, or attempted death of another family member for financial gain, their share of the inheritance is not just forfeited, it does not go to the next of kin. It is immediately liquidated and donated in full to the New Hampshire Fund for Marine Safety and Conservation." The silence in the courtroom was absolute. You could hear a pin drop. I watched the realization hit Blair. It happened in slow motion. Her eyes widened, her jaw went slack. She had killed our parents. She had tried to kill me. She had destroyed our entire family, lied, cheated, and manipulated everyone for 4 years. And it was all for absolutely nothing, even if I had died on that concrete floor. Even if she had successfully signed the paper to turn off my ventilator, she would not have seen a single penny. She would have been left with nothing but the guilt and a check made out to a charity. She gets nothing?" Blair whispered, her voice trembling. "Nothing," Tessa confirmed. "The money is gone. Blair, you did all of this for $0. That was when the dam broke. Blair did not cry for forgiveness. She did not look at me and apologize for the lifetime of pain she had caused. She did not mourn the parents she had murdered. She stood up, shaking off her lawyer's hand, and screamed. It was a guttural, animalistic sound of pure greed and loss. "Where is the money?" she shrieked, her face twisting into an ugly mask of rage. "It is mine. You cannot give it to a charity. I earned it. I did what I had to do. Give me my money." The marshals tackled her as she tried to climb over the defense table, clawing at the air as if she could grab the invisible millions floating away from her. The jury looked on in horror. The gallery looked on in disgust. In that moment, stripped of her lies and her pretenses, Everyone saw exactly who Blair Hernandez was. She was a hollow shell filled with nothing but avarice. Judge Holloway waited for her to be restrained before delivering the sentence. Blair Hernandez, he said, his voice like granite, for the murder of David and Maria Hernandez and the attempted murder of Emery Hernandez, along with multiple counts of fraud and forgery, I sentence you to 2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. You traded your humanity for a fortune you were never going to get. May God have mercy on your soul, because this court has none. Grant Sutter received 25 years for conspiracy and grand larceny. He did not look at Blair as he was led away. He just looked at the floor, defeated by a woman he thought he could manipulate, and a woman he underestimated. As the bailiffs dragged Blair out of the side door, she turned one last time. She locked eyes with me. "Emery!" she screamed, spit flying from her mouth. "Fix this! You are the trustee. Sign the check. Just sign the check." I looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I felt nothing. No fear, no anger, no sadness, just a profound sense of relief. "The bank is closed. Blair," I said softly. The heavy oak doors slammed shut, cutting off her screams. 6 months later, I stood on the dock of the boathouse. The structure was empty now. I had sold the property. Along with the main house, there were too many ghosts here, too many shadows in the corners. The proceeds from the sale, along with the bulk of the trust, were sitting in a new account. I walked with a cane now, a permanent reminder of the spinal damage. But I was walking. My voice had returned, though it was a little huskier than before, a little deeper. I was not keeping the money. I did not want it. It felt tainted. I kept enough to buy a small cottage in a quiet town in Vermont, far away from the ocean. The rest, the millions that Blair had killed for, I used to start a foundation, the Hernandez Initiative. We provide legal and forensic accounting support to victims of elder abuse and financial fraud within families. We help people who are being gaslighted by the ones who are supposed to love them. I spend my days looking at spreadsheets, finding the missing numbers, spotting the lies before they turn into tragedies. I am still an investigator, but now, I investigate to save people, not just to catch them. I have a new family now, not by blood, but by bond. Doctor Nolan Price comes up for dinner on Sundays. Detective Klein sends me Christmas cards. And Tessa Vaughn is the godmother to the golden retriever I just adopted. I learned the hard way that family is not about whose DNA you share. It is not about who sits at your Thanksgiving table or who is named in the will. Family are the people who stand by your bed when you cannot move. Family are the people who listen when you can only whisper. Family are the people who refuse to let you die, even when the world tells them to pull the plug. My sister signed a paper to end my life, but in the end, she only signed away her own. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It was a difficult journey to relive, but I hope it serves as a reminder to trust your instincts and value the people who truly care for you. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Please leave a comment below with your city or country, so we can see how far this story has traveled. If you enjoyed this narration, please consider subscribing to the Morgan Revenge Stories channel, liking this video, and hitting that notification bell to help share this story with others who might need to hear it. Stay safe and watch your back.